A warm welcome to Aviation this week on Channels Television, your one-stop shop for happenings in the aviation industry. I'm Bukola Joe Oketumbi. Aviation, probably more than any other mode of transportation, is greatly affected by weather. From thunderstorms and lightning, every phase of flight has the potential to be impacted by weather. In Nigeria, the Harmattan haze is a phenomenon of concern, and authorities harp on weather minima for different airports. The impact of weather on flights is our focus. Plus, 50 airports in the United States get buffered as the 5G communication is set to launch. Our background report is next. Weather directly affects every phase of flight and type of aviation operation, ranging from air carriers to general aviation. Weather hazards and wind patterns directly affect the safety and economic efficiency of air carriers. Harmattan haze, rain and crosswinds mean that air traffic controllers have to increase the gap between planes that are landing, but safety remains the first consideration for the aviation industry.
I can't rule it out. But on issue of safety, on issue of weather, on issue of fueling, things that could affect the safety of that operation, honestly speaking, the law backs them and say we support them on that. And passengers should realize this.
We aviators, we like to make sure that the flights are done as smooth as possible and as safe as we can. Delay, cancellations will always occur in aviation, not in Nigeria, globally, because weather will set in, aircrafts can go tech, and there will be delays, there will be cancellation. Now, how you handle the delays and how you handle the passengers and how you communicate to the passengers is another thing.
The same weather can make it slower and more difficult for the planes to taxi between runway and terminal building. As many commercial flights are cruising more than 5 miles above the ground, they can be affected by different conditions. Weather remains a constant factor in flight disruptions, and many passengers say they want to keep safe.
I remember one time I was going to Abuja. I think that was rain. It was pretty bad. We couldn't land. We had to return back to Lagos. It was scary though. After a series of attempts, the pilot tried to land the plane, but he couldn't.
I've flown into storms where the turbulence, nobody had to tell you that you wish you had never been on the flight. People were shaking, even with your seat belts, so people fell out of their chairs. So it's absolutely, I mean, there are weather conditions where nobody has to tell you that this is an adverse weather condition you are flying in.
Airlines also explained that delays and diversions can occur when weather changes occur suddenly when an aircraft is airborne, because this can happen without notice. An example is wind shear.
This is a phenomenon whereby the speed of wind and direction changes abruptly, but it is more dangerous for aviation when it occurs at low level. Why? The simple reason is during approach and landing and during takeoff, that is when we have the most demand on the aircraft performance. And if at approach you are coming into land, you are at very low speed, you have the engines really working hard to keep the speed that you have selected. All of a sudden there is a change of wind direction or wind speed. It will affect the performance of the aircraft, and it might cause it to sink, and then it can actually, if not detected very quickly, it can affect the performance that the aircraft might not reach the runway.
The growth of Nigeria's aviation industry has been greatly impacted by quality forecasts, helping to identify the most dangerous weather hazards which are detrimental to the industry while enhancing safe travel. take all over. On our interview segment, the Director General of the Nigerian Meteorological Agency, Professor Mansour Mathazu, is our guest. He explains the role of weather minima for airports during the Harmattan period and why it's important for pilots and crew to obtain information before flights.
Weather system affects operations, especially in the aviation industry. But for this season specifically, the significant adverse weather effects that affects smooth operation is dust, or the Harmattan dust, which reduces visibility to certain level that at times flights have to be delayed, or when there is serious inclement weather around the airport vicinity and a route, some flights must be cancelled. But as we know, Harmattan season comes in cycle, so the influx of the dust does not prevail throughout this Harmattan period. It comes in a cycle of 4 to 6 days and also relaxes and gives some breaks. So we've had some few cases of flight delays before the end of year Christmas festivity activities, and some few ones also afterwards. But we do provide updates in all the Nigerian airports, and also we advise that when flights are being delayed because of bad weather, passengers should be very patient and understanding the airlines, because it's as a result, the safety efficiency is our slogan in the aviation industry. We have what we call the weather minima, and that's the minimal weather conditions that aircraft should operate based on the available prevailing weather conditions. And for visibility, we have the weather minima in all Nigerian airports. Those that do have ILS category 3, and those that do have also ILS category 2. Anytime there is weather situation that is well below the minima, so that is when most flights are getting delayed or cancelled. And of course also at times some of this requires training, like for category 3 ILS. So the aircraft also must have an ILS instrument, and also the pilots must be trained also to operate with the ILS. But we are having a lot of capacity building and also interaction with the within the industry that is reducing. As you can see this year, we've experienced minimal of such cases of total cancellation and delays of flights as a result of bad inclement weather. We have pilot briefing rooms that we also have audio visuals, and also relay most of the meteorological information via emails and other applications to pilots. But we also do encourage pilots and crew members of airlines to come to the pilot briefing rooms. Just last few weeks, we have upgraded the pilot briefing rooms at the Lagos and the Abuja airport, which provides maximum interaction, because the pilots are the ones that fly into the atmosphere, and at times when they come down, we interact with them and we get some feedbacks on the performance of our forecast, and that has encouraged us a lot. And we also explain to them in details the prevailing weather condition and route at the different layers of the atmosphere. So we've been doing pretty well on this, but we also encourage pilots to please take weather information very serious, and always come for their folders in our pilot briefing room and in our forecasting offices across the various airports.
At London City Airport, the air traffic controllers have gone. Perched above the terminal building, the old control tower with its panoramic windows is empty of controllers. Monitors, a few pens and some hand sanitizers are all that remains. City became the world's first major international airport to switch to a remote digital tower. The airport, nestled beside former dockyards a few miles east of London's Canary Wharf financial district, is London's smallest. Before the pandemic, it had 5 million passengers a year, mostly traveling on business to European destinations like Frankfurt and Amsterdam. City planes now take off and land guided by air traffic controllers who are based 90 miles away. They direct the airport using information from a newly built taller control tower stacked with 16 high-definition cameras and multiple sensors. The switch to remote air traffic control has raised a few eyebrows, but London City's chief operating officer says so far it has worked seamlessly.
So the existing air traffic control tower was over 30 years old and required some significant investment to upgrade it. We also have implemented some new aircraft stands and we needed to change the location of the air traffic control tower. So we've moved location, and this is our new digital air traffic control tower. And what that does is deliver digital air traffic control capability, and it's the first of its kind anywhere in the world at this scale.
Metal spikes guard the top of the 50-meter tower to protect the cameras from birds, and each camera has a self-cleaning mechanism that stops insects and debris from blurring images. Those images then travel multiple separate high-speed fiber links to the remote center in Swanwick, Hampshire, where London City's air traffic controllers are relocated. The live sound of the airport is piped into the new control center so that controllers still hear the plane's engines roaring into life and the reverse thrust of touchdown. And the 14 screens in the Swanwick control center are not at risk from a buffering internet or lost connection.
We're used to dealing with data and presenting that data to our controllers so that they can keep the aircraft separate, safely apart whilst they travel. So it's much the same here for the tower. We're using the data, we're presenting the pictures. We can see it, you can see it behind me. It's very much like sitting in the tower and seeing the aircraft operating. So it's a digital reproduction of the live picture. What you're seeing today is the live picture at London City. Then enhanced with additional data like aircraft call sign, maybe the route that it's going to, maybe the stand that it's going to. It allows us to add all of that to the data. So are there risks? Well, we think we've got all the risks well covered. So cybersecurity is well covered, for example. In terms of the job for the controller, it's very much like doing it in the same way as they would in the air traffic control tower.
For City Airport, the new remote tower, which costs just less than £20 million to design and build, is not about saving money. With the new technology, City's current number of controllers will be able to handle more plane movements once flying recovers after the pandemic. City will also be able to handle 45 plane movements per hour, up from 40 in 2019.
So we think that the digital tower is going to revolutionise how we can deliver airport services. So it allows us to reproduce what we do today, it allows us to further enhance that job, and potentially allows us to group together different airports in one place and present different ways of efficiently delivering the service to the airport customer. So it really is the tip of the iceberg of improvement to what we can do for the airport ATC.
So fundamentally, the job hasn't changed. It's still about the controller's eyes finding the aircraft and monitoring it visually. The difference is we're using screens instead of windows.
The airport's plan for a remote tower dates to 2016, when it realized that in order to go ahead with a £500 million expansion plan to fit in extra bigger planes, it would need to significantly invest in the old control tower. It decided instead to build a new one, given the efficiency benefits offered by a new remote technology developed by Swedish company Saab. Heathrow, Britain's busiest airport, is also considering remote control towers in its future plans. When Aviation This Week is back, News Flash is next. Do join us again. The Nigerian Aviation Handling Company NACO was asked fans to disclose the identity of its staff arrested for illegal activities at the airport. This comes on the heels of the Federal Airport Authority of Nigeria's statement of the arrest of over 90 persons said to be touted at the Murtala Mohammed Airport, Lagos, and the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport, Abuja. Fans said the arrests were part of efforts to rid the nation's airports of touting and extortion following incessant complaints by travelers of being extorted by personnel at airports, particularly since the outbreak of COVID-19. According to the statement, some of those arrested are staff of Patovioke Nigeria Limited, Lakewood Services, NACO PLC, and other airport staff. The United States Federal Aviation Administration has disclosed a list of 50 airports that will have buffer zones when wireless carriers turn on new 5G C-band service on January the 19th. AT&T and Verizon Communications have agreed to create these buffer zones around the airports to reduce the risk of disruption from potential interference to sensitive airplane instruments like altimeters. They have also agreed to delay deployment for 2 weeks of vetting and aviation safety standoff. The list includes airports in New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, and Las Vegas, amongst others. More than 70 Grupo Aeromexico pilots have tested positive for the coronavirus during a surge of infections from the Omicron variant, leading to 22 cancelled flights, a union representative of pilots said. The press secretary for Pilots Association, ASPA, said the cases triggered a domino effect, forcing Aeromexico to isolate entire crews to prevent the virus from spreading. The pilots who tested positive are said to be up to 5% of Aeromexico's pilots. The union's representative added that cancellations represented 5% of Aeromexico's operation and affected planes heading to the Mexican cities of Guadalajara, Cancun, and Monterrey, plus an international flight. Meanwhile, passengers waited in long queues inside Terminal 2 of Mexico City Airport. Many of them had their flights delayed or cancelled. Thousands of anti-vaccine protesters rallied in cities across France, denouncing what they describe as President Emmanuel Macron's intent to hurt people refusing the COVID-19 shots by tightening curbs on their civil liberties. Macron had earlier said he wanted to irritate unvaccinated people by making their lives so complicated they will end up getting jabbed. The protesters accused Macron of trampling on their freedom and treating citizens unequally. He says freedoms carry responsibilities that include protecting the health of others. People in France already have to show either proof of vaccination or a negative test to enter restaurants and bars and use interregional trains. But with Omicron infection surging, the government wants to drop the test option.
Air cargo is indeed a trade facilitator that contributes to global economic development and creates millions of jobs. Air cargo transports over $6 trillion worth of goods, accounting for approximately 35% of world trade by value. Figures from the International Air Transport Association for September 2021 showed global demand, measured in cargo ton kilometers, was up 9.1% compared to September 2019, compared to pre-COVID levels. There is a benefit from supply chain congestion as manufacturers turn to air transport for speed, but severe capacity constraints continue to limit the ability of air cargo to absorb extra demand. For African airlines, international cargo volumes increased by 34.6% in September, the largest increase of all regions for the 9th consecutive month.
The COVID-19 has really lowered the passenger figure and also have an increase globally on the cargo figure. Actually, the IATA is projecting $175 billion in terms of revenue for cargo. But unfortunately, that is not the case in Nigeria. What we have in Nigeria, or what we are having in Nigeria presently, is slight increase, which is not that sustainable due to so many factors.
While Africa benefits largely, Nigeria benefits minimally as challenges back home affect cargo movement, especially the inadequate export capacity. As African Airlines recorded a 62.2% decline in passenger traffic demand despite a moderate improvement globally. The minimal global surge was driven by recovery in domestic markets, in particular China, where some travel curbs were lifted following the COVID-19 outbreaks in August. IATA's Director General, Willie Walsh, said September performance was a positive development.
We're certainly on the path to recovery. The reopening of the US, the announcement that the US would open to European travellers, that's been a great boost. You know, we were disappointed earlier in the year that it didn't happen. It was a very pleasant surprise when it was announced that the US would open for vaccinated travellers in November. We still forecast losses in the industry in 2022. But the losses will have significantly reduced to about $12 billion US.
While border closures and quarantine mandates seem to be giving way with the opening of the UK-US border, IATA is also warning that flights to Nigeria may be hampered because of the $208 million blocked funds of foreign airlines that operate in the country.
Essentially, what it means is that international airlines will have their funds tied up in a central bank for as long as there's a paucity of foreign exchange to service those obligations. The impact, to a large extent, is probably a situation where you have a lot of international airlines who will be reluctant to come into Nigeria, realizing that they will not be able to repatriate their funds from the sales of their airline tickets. The problem with connectivity will get a bit more accentuated if you would have one or two other airlines, international airlines that is, discontinue service to Nigeria because of all these issues of blocked funds. Besides that, it's a major strain and stress on the foreign reserve if we're not earning enough to be able to support the obligations by international parties to which we've signed bilaterals or multilaterals.
Globally, about $1 billion in airline funds is blocked by 20 countries worldwide, and of this, about $700 million is tied up in 11 African countries, including Nigeria.
This is where our flight lands. It's bye for now. I'm Bukola Joe Oketumbi.